Ooh, it's always fun when we get a little surprise Apple event, even though it wasn't really a surprise and we kind of expected it. Or at least we kind of expected there to be a release. I personally wasn't anticipating a whole entire event, but here we are. Apple's new Let Loose event is going to be happening on May 7th, and it is pretty clear that this is an iPad event. Let's see, an Apple Pencil drawing on the screen, Tim Cook saying pencil us in for May 7th. Yeah, I think we're gonna get new iPads, and I'll tell you what, it's about dang time, because the iPad is in a really weird place right now. And I can tell that you guys are in a weird place about the iPad as well, because the last couple of times I've made videos sort of expressing my frustration with the iPad, they've resonated really, really well. It's clear that I'm not alone in thinking that the iPad needs some serious attention, and finally, it also seems like Apple is ready to listen. But this event is probably more important than you think, just because this is the longest stretch of time that the iPad has gone untouched. There have not been any updates to any iPads since October 2022, when the M2 iPad Pros were announced. Think about that. That's more than 18 months since any iPad has been updated. And while I know that there are some that are not as critical of the iPad as me, even the most die-hard iPad fans for whom the current products work extremely well, they would probably have to admit that the last time the iPad got any update that was really important was the M1 iPad Pro. That's when Apple introduced Mini LED on the 12.9 inch and the M1 chip, which brought significant performance gains. The M2 was really a very minor spec bump, so it's been more than 3 years since the iPad received a quote-unquote major update. And for the rest of us more casual iPad users, I mean, I still have my 2018 11-inch 64GB iPad, and I use this thing pretty frequently. It is still perfectly good. And that really underscores, I think, why this event is so important. Apple has never gone an entire calendar year without updating an iPad until now. And a couple of minutes ago, I put a poll up on Twitter asking if you guys are buying a new iPad, and more than half said that there is no chance that you're gonna upgrade, no matter what happens. So the iPad's in a really weird spot, because right now, they're kind of too good. The 2018 iPad Pro, this thing was seriously OP. It is so good that 6 years later, people are still like, I don't really see a need to upgrade. That's pretty crazy. People don't say that about the iPhone very often, I'll tell you that. And if you know anyone who's using a 2018 Mac, they're probably just waiting to upgrade at this point. And I think when I look at the replies to this tweet, you can really get a sense for where people are when it comes to the iPad. Dennis says, I don't have a need for an iPad at all. Gage said, still happy with an 8th gen iPad, won't need a new one since I'm just watching YouTube. Sam says, probably going to get a refurbished M1 Air, presumably when prices go down. And Zumu says, nah, my iPad and Apple Pencil are still great. I'm not gonna upgrade until they stop working. I think that really says a lot about the current iPad market. They're almost too good for their own good. And a big component of that is software, which is why this event is a little bit strange, because it's happening literally 1 month before WWDC, when Apple will have the chance to unveil new features for iPad OS. So that leaves me with a couple of questions. We have a decent number of hardware rumors, everything from new OLED displays to a thinner enclosure with a new design, thinner bezels, a matte screen option, and a landscape-oriented front camera, in addition to other design changes and potentially even MagSafe wireless charging. But I think a lot of you guys would agree that the software is the biggest obstacle for making the iPad truly, truly great. See, a lot of things have changed since the iPad was announced all the way back in 2010. Back then, it was a pretty simple device. It was meant to slot between your iPhone and your Mac, doing things that both of those could do, but in a more convenient way. But ironically, with Apple Silicon, the Mac has adopted a lot of the traits that the iPad was initially meant to have.
If there's going to be a third category of device, it's going to have to be better at these kinds of tasks than a laptop or a smartphone. Otherwise, it has no reason for being.
And that's why we get comments like these. People feeling that the iPad is kind of unnecessary when you can get a Mac for the same amount of money with the same processor, but a much more powerful operating system. But that being said, the iPad does have its own niche, and that is for artists. the Apple Pencil and seemingly Apple's branding is leaning very heavily into the iPad as a tool for creativity rhetoric. And there's a lot of people for whom that's extremely important. People have full-time jobs that require an iPad to do. But even then, I know a lot of those folks that are still rocking 2018 iPad Pros as well. So the challenge is really on Apple to improve these new iPads for the diehard users and for the casual users. I'm very, very curious to see what they come up with. But one thing we're pretty certain about, and that is a trickle-down effect of features. Ross Young has been reporting that the mini LED display that Apple currently uses on the iPad Pro is going to move down market to an iPad Air, which will now be offered for the first time in a 13-inch display size. And I think this is a pretty big move for a lot of people. They're going to really appreciate having that larger display at a lower price point. But I am a little nervous that means Apple's going to jack the prices up for the Pros. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, the iPad has become so expensive. Remember when it first launched?
If you listen to the pundits, we're going to price it under $1,000, which is code for $999, because we want to put this in the hands of lots of people. The iPad pricing starts not at $999, but at just $499.
I mean, that's where this started 14 years ago, $500. Today, that'll get you an iPad mini. The iPad Pro 12.9 with a keyboard, that's nearly as expensive as a mini LED 14-inch MacBook Pro. The pricing has just gotten so high for what the iPad can do, while the Mac has stayed at $1,000 and gotten only better every year. But honestly, look, the rumors sound good. I like OLED. I like a new design, maybe MagSafe charging. We've heard about a new Magic Keyboard. All of that sounds great, but it's all going to be kind of irrelevant almost if Apple doesn't pair it with some significant new software features. Time and time again, that is the issue that is holding people back. And it makes me a little nervous that we're getting these new iPads a month before WWDC. And even then, the features that Apple announces for iPadOS this year won't actually ship to the general public until September. So yeah, it's a weird one. I'm very curious to hear what you guys think, so let me know in the comments down below. And of course, you can come here to find coverage of the event after it happens. This is a pretty exciting one. I'm very, very interested to see how it all plays out, and I will see you guys very soon. Catch you later.